Thank you for you. And I say again that I'm really impressed with the NBC who are nowadays coming long before. In the past we had to wait for them and wait and wait and wait. So very glad that you are all here. Yeah, good morning and most welcome. The issue that I want to address this morning is the planned adoption of the amendments to the international health regulations as well as the new pandemic treaty by the World Health Organization. But I would like to start off by saying something about the media. On Wednesday, 6th December, that was 5 months ago, we had a media conference here in this room when I addressed probably one of the most crucial issues that I've ever addressed before. I pleaded with the media to report on it for the sake of the well-being of the people of Namibia. Following the continuous devastating effect that the so-called COVID pandemic and the subsequent administering of the experimental vaccines had on the lives of fellow Namibians. We invited all the newspapers, TV and radio stations, and we did it well in advance. And we were hoping that they would attend and report on this very serious issue. Only the NBC, TV, NAMPA and the New Era and a few others turned up. My statement was mailed to all the media, but sadly the statement was not carried by any of the media outlets who failed to attend. Now, ladies and gentlemen, there can be no doubt that the top priority of any responsible government should be the well-being of its citizens, especially when it concerns health issues. And when our health is threatened, like was the case with the hoax of a so-called COVID pandemic, and more especially the constant intimidation by our government to allow an experimental so-called vaccine to be administered to us, then we have a responsibility to speak up. And that is what I've been doing since the outbreak of the so-called pandemic. But in order for this message to reach the nation, we need the media to publish our statements, even if it goes against the narrative of the government. Even when world-renowned scientists and doctors published hundreds of papers in which they proved without any doubt that the so-called vaccines were causing serious injuries like paralysis, strokes, infertility, miscarriages, turbo cancer, and worst of all, deaths, our government and especially the media remained not only silent about this, but kept on day after day to push the narrative of the government, who clearly followed the instructions of the World Health Organization, encouraging and in certain sectors even forcing people to get vaccinated. We thought that in a free country with freedom of speech, especially freedom of the media, the press, that the media will do whatever necessary to forewarn and inform the nation of these possible life-threatening side effects. But it did not happen. Needless to say that we were absolutely shocked when we realized that the media had no intention to inform the nation. And even more shocking was when we came to the conclusion that not only was our government captured, but also our media, like the rest of the mainstream media around the world. The scientists that I have referred to earlier have warned that the serious injuries caused by these experimental vaccines would be experienced for as long as 5 years. And today it is clear that they were correct. Because you know as well as I do that people are dying as we speak. Young people, people who had no health issues and who were fit. And still our ministry and the media remain silent. There is currently a court case ongoing where the Health Defence League took the government to court where they demand answers. But the government is playing games in order to prevent us to get to the truth. I'm absolutely convinced that the time will come when this SWAPO government will have no choice but to accept full responsibility for the suffering, the grief, and the despair they have caused to our fellow citizens who lost loved ones and those who are suffering permanent injuries. Despite the fact that the WHO and its globalist partners, amongst others the World Economic Forum, George Soros, Bill Gates, the Rockefeller Foundation, and many more, must have realized that they have failed with this man-made COVID pandemic to have the impact that they so desired. Still, they carry on with the evil agenda. The latest announcement by the World Health Organization that they want member countries to agree to over 300 amendments to the international health regulations. And they are also going to introduce what they call a new pandemic treaty under the constitution of the World Health Organization. And I quote, what they say is to bolster the world's collective preparedness and response to future pandemics. And I end the quote. Their intention is to have these approved at the upcoming meeting of the World Health Assembly that is going to take place in Geneva at the end of this month. Now this is absolute nonsense. It has got absolute nothing to do with bolstering preparedness of future pandemics. The World Health Organization and their globalist partners want member states to agree to something that will give the World Health Organization full control as to decide when to declare a pandemic and also what measures governments and member states must apply. This is nothing but a planned coup. Since the beginning of the so-called COVID outbreak, our SWAPO government has been negotiating with the World Health Organization in absolute secrecy. And this is once again the case. The question is how our government could ever consider to agree to anything this crucial without having allowed open discussion by our health professionals, and more importantly, why it was not submitted to our Parliament for proper discussion and consideration. Because should these amendments, as well as the pandemic treaty, as they call it, be adopted, then it might have far-reaching consequences for us as a sovereign country, and will without any doubt be in contravention of our own health regulations and or even our constitution. The responsible way in which this issue should have been dealt with is what the Dutch government did, and I would like to refer to their decision. They noted that both the Working Group on International Health Regulations and the International Negotiating Body were authorized to deliver the final legal formulation of the envisaged amendments to the International Health Regulations and the Pandemic Treaty to the 77th World Health Assembly, as I said, that is going to take place end of this month. And noted that this process is proceeding at an unprecedented pace, while such far-reaching measures require more time to be considered, reviewed, and properly implemented. The fact that the procedural obligation under the International Health Regulations has been ignored, leaving unclear the link between the amended health regulations and the new pandemic treaty, which undermine the international legal order, and thus the democratic legitimacy of this regulation in violation of Article 55 of the International Health Regulations, which require proposed amendments to be submitted to the contracting states at least 4 months before deliberating and voting at the World Health Assembly. The manner in which these issues were dealt with does not provide sufficient opportunity to examine the changes and their most important legal, health, economic, financial, and human rights implications. Taking all the above into consideration, the request by the World Health Organization for Namibia as a member state to adopt the amendments to the International Health Regulations or the text of the envisaged pandemic treaty is not in line with UN principles and guidelines. We therefore insist that our government request a postponement of the votes on the amendments and thus on the International Health Regulation and the new Pandemic Treaty at the upcoming meeting at the World Health Assembly. Should the postponement not be obtained, then the government must vote against the proposed amendments to the International Health Regulations and the new Pandemic Treaty as a whole. But more importantly, that the government will engage the public in Namibia in order to inform us properly about the proposed amendments as well as the Pandemic Treaty. I've said it before and I want to repeat that we, the people, will not allow this government ever again to force lockdowns, mask wearing and this ridiculous regulations like what they did during the so-called COVID pandemic, which clearly was a hoax. And I said this 2 years ago already. It is time that our government act as leaders of a sovereign nation and not as puppets of an evil, unelected body like the World Health Organization. In conclusion, we are waiting anxiously and looking forward to see how you as a media is going to deal with this statement. I thank you.